So today's session, from data to impact, how AI is shaping the future of remote support. And I'm so excited to welcome on camera with me today our presenter, the one and only Chris Savio, our Senior Director of Product Marketing Manager. Hey Chris, how are you?
I am great. How are you, Danny?
I'm awesome. It's not raining right now, so I'm happy about that.
That is a plus. Yes, up here in the Northeast, I'm in the Boston area, and it's been monsooning the last 3 days, so it's nice to
It's
not have to deal with that.
exactly. It's definitely spring among us, right? All right. I will pass the mic over to you, Chris, and looking forward to an awesome session.
Awesome. Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for joining me on this Wednesday, or today is Wednesday, right? No, Tuesday. I can't keep track of days. This Tuesday, either morning, afternoon, evening, depending where you're kind of dialing in from and listening in from. Um, as Danny said, my name is Chris Savio. I'm a senior director of product marketing here at GoTo for our LogMeIn business, our IT products. Our Log Me and Rescue product we're going to be focusing on and sponsoring of today, our Resolve product, and a few others as well. Before jumping into the content today, I do want to give, for those that aren't familiar with Rescue, kind of the high level, right? This is really the most kind of marketing-esque product pitch that I'll give today. Then I'll take a step back from it, but obviously want to just make sure everyone's familiar and also know the context of where I'm coming from, where our perspective from LogMeIn is coming from. So LogMeIn and Resolve is our enterprise grade remote support solution, technical support solution that covers everything from desktop, remote control support, mobile support, visual engagement tools, so camera sharing and co-browse. We kind of cover the gamut in those support capabilities. Really stands out for its robust in-session functionality with everything from live scripting to advanced diagnostics capabilities. And then under the hood, really where the enterprise moniker comes from, or I like to classify it, is really in that flexibility, right? You kind of associate with enterprises the needs to make solutions their own, to tailor to their workflows and ecosystems. And Rescue really gives you ample opportunity from that, whether it's with integrating with your tools with open APIs or out of the box integrations, to the branding and customization that you can do to how end users connect to your platform or how you connect with them, to the look and feel, to permissions down to granular rule-based permissions for your agents and your admins, right? And so kind of has you covered any use case or problem thrown at it. Rescue's kind of able to solve. We have some of the world's largest organizations globally using it today for just those reasons. Okay, that's my sales pitch, marketing hat. I'll take off for that and really jump into the discussion today and really the topics we're going to be covering. So first thing I want to do is obviously I think it's always important when you're having these discussions about any type of technology, not necessarily just AI, making sure the perspective and framing, like what is the state of this state, right? Where are there opportunities? What are some of the challenges that maybe you and your teams are facing? And some, hopefully, I'll get some virtual head nods to what I start talking about when I hit into these. And maybe there's other things that you think some of your peers are facing and you're not facing it, or you're starting to see it on the horizon. So want to touch on that a little bit. And then we'll pivot into the topic of AI, right? Where are we today in that kind of cycle of AI adoption? How are organizations using it? What are these kind of use cases that maybe you're using today or that you're going to be looking to use? Then about the impact of AI, not just how it's impacting businesses today, but where are the opportunities for potential impact that you might see for your business if you haven't started using it yet, or you're kind of just starting, or maybe some other thoughts of things to measure if you've been using it at scale already. Also going to do kind of a quick little demo of some of the functionality that Rescue has recently deployed with our AI that's actually going to bring to life, I think, some of what I talked about in the use cases earlier. And then lastly, really close it out with, while everything's well and good, there are challenges and opportunities, and how should you get started thinking about those, if you're going to move forward with AI. So, and then as Danny said, questions, feel free, don't hold them till the end. I know I have them listed there. Chime in if you have questions along the way. I'll try and keep an eye out as well. Danny will be in the back watching. If something's really relevant to what I'm talking about, we'll just jump right into it and answer it. Don't have to necessarily hold them all to the end. So with that, you know what? Let's jump right into it, right? So I think there's two ways to break down, right, your kind of tech to support, your customer support, whether you're supporting your end users or your employees or customers of your organizations or customers of other organizations, right? There's the people and the processes. So I want to kind of look at the two independently of each other, right? really today in today's support environment, I believe that the frontline teams are facing enormous pressure, right? And we're seeing some concerning trends, in that kind of agent experience in particular, right? There was a study late last year by a company called Metrigy, which I pulled actually a lot of great stats for this webinar from. Their customer experience transformation. It found that 67% of organizations are experiencing kind of a rise in turnover of these kind of technical support roles. Then burnouts being one of the kind of primary cited factors of why there is this turnout, right? There's this constant pressure to resolve increasingly complicated issues, and it's really starting to take that toll. I mean, the other stat that's there is, that also found is that nearly 96% of agents are reporting kind of this weekly stress, right? So it's that volume of calls that are coming, it's the complexity of questions that they're getting, and it really is wreaking havoc on a space that is heavily relied upon to keep things humming along. And then when you look at the other end of it, right, there's no give or let up, I guess, from the customer expectation side of it, right? Their expectations continue to rise. Another study last year by Zendesk showed that 82% of customers are expecting this resolution to occur in that first interaction. This is up almost, I think, 11 or 12% from 2 years prior or 3 years prior when the same study was run. And at the same time, you can kind of see that satisfaction is kind of flatlining, stagnating at this around 73%. It's been like that for a number of years. So there isn't a person, it's not going backwards, which is great. But the problem is with these expectations to kind of have that first resolution and things are getting more complicated and complex than what's needed to be solved, something has to give, right? Staff is turning over and so forth. And so what's happening on these first calls, you're getting these complicated natures. People don't want to get off the call. You're getting longer wait times, maybe longer handle times, and so agents are becoming overworked, getting more stressed, frustrated, and then customers could become further unhappy, and your support costs are rising, right? And so there's a lot of compounding effect if you think about it from this end of it. Now, what about the process side of it, right? So there as well, there's plenty of opportunity to find ways to make improvements, right? And find ways where AI can have an impact, which you'll see in a little bit. So the specific pain points to me that are creating some inefficiencies in support today, one, right? And I mentioned this on the last slide, with some of the stressors, is that a recent state of technical support showed that 70% of IT leaders are actually saying that handling requests are just becoming much more complex, right? Much more complex technical issues compared to just a few years ago, right? The technology, the problems, the systems, and so forth are just becoming more and more complex. And it's hybrid work, it's diverse technology stacks, it's more complicated hardware or software, the broader proliferation just of devices and applications, right, are compounding regardless who you're supporting or within what arena, is just getting more confusing. It also doesn't help the process that a lot of things which were originally troubleshooting, right, are being done in some form of self-service. So already calls that are getting into support have kind of gotten some of those basic things out of the way. So there's not a lot of those quick kind of burn and turn scripted calls you can get through. Another critical pain point is something that that's very pervasive is this almost unnecessary escalation. I'm going to be interested to know, feel free to drop in the chat or something. This is something that you see in your space organization, but TSIA had reported that 47% of tickets that are getting escalated are actually unnecessarily getting escalated to higher support tiers, right? And this is primarily because those first level agents lack, some of this basic diagnostic tools, comprehensive knowledge access, right? There's that high turnover, so they're more junior, and if they don't have the tools or access to knowledge easily, they're just assuming next step, okay, I need to escalate this over because I can't do it myself, right? I'm going to driving up costs, right? When you're moving to higher tiers, it's driving up time to resolve the problem, and really cost and time are your two biggest levers that you can kind of pull in the support organization. Both of these are negatively impacting that. And then another big piece, right, which is driving up, is some research from Gartner that showed that support agents are spending close to 40% of their time that are searching for information, right? And so this leads back to maybe that comprehensive knowledge access. It's there, but you just can't find it, right? And so access to this knowledge or maybe previous ticket history, just documentation or resources, is a massive drain that's impacting the resolution time, impacting, like we saw on the last slide, kind of burnout and frustration by your users. And I think then when you kind of ladder that up to this robust self-service on the customer demands that I mentioned earlier on, those processes, what that's doing is yeah, you're building up documentation for that, but by then the time it reaches your agent, some of this basic triaging has already been done, and there's an expectation for higher levels of support from that first person that's being contacted, right? So kind of compounding these together, I really think, if you're not already then acutely aware, right, presents a lot of opportunity for different functionalities that AI can help solve for to alleviate these concerns for your agents, for your customers, right? And so that's what I want to dive into to kind of think about today, right? And so if we're to dive in and look at kind of this adoption curve, right? You think about that path, right? From a few years ago, from piloting out to kind of getting things in production. I really think today we are, we're not at widespread adoption, but we're well past, in my mind, kind of pilot phases for a lot of organizations, right? Into getting things into the wild, getting things kind of humming across their organizations, right? Um, and this hype, right? According to some analysts' surveys, nearly 9 in 10 organizations are actively experimenting, right? So this is what I mean. We're kind of some people are still not pilot, but I think even some are faster, right? Because they're even planning to invest more within that next year. um, that being said, you know, not all investments are equal, both in dollars and scale, as well as where they're being invested, right? McKinsey had some research that broke down that showed that there's really a split between automation capabilities, advanced AI for diagnostics, and then just having more of a mature kind of predictive autonomous resolution, right? So kind of across the gamut of where things are, and not all AI is equal, and not all use cases are the same, right? So this is where we'll talk a little bit about how to kind of move forward or where you should be looking in a little while. But one size doesn't fit all, and where the right value is and biggest impact is going to be for an organization. Some it is a much more complicated, maybe labor intensive deployment, and others maybe there's a quicker wins that can be done. But regardless of what they are, really the thing that is most consistent and driving factor is very clear. That it's this productivity idea, this productivity lever or gains that businesses are looking for. IDC had a study that was out there that showed that 92% of AI users are focusing on those productivity gains, and half of them expect that um, uh, they're going to have this across all customer engagements and services within the next 24 months, right? To deliver that kind of high ROI for their business, right? So that's where they're going to see, most businesses think that's where they're going to see their impact, right? If you're getting back that productivity, saving time, time equaling money, and that's where they're hoping to see that impact. Um, so what I would love to know, right, thinking about this curve and where they are, I'm going to pull up kind of a first poll. We'll have another one later on, but I'd love to know just from you, right? Like where are you in your adoption of AI, right? Have you adopted AI in your IT or technical support operations, right? So we have yes, extensively, to some extent, not yet, but maybe you're planning to. No, and you're not currently considering it. And it would be interesting if you're not currently considering it. I'm actually excited that you're on here because maybe you can change your mind a little or assuage some concerns that you have or answer some questions. So feel free, to be honest in here. It's always good to know where we're going. So it looks like a lot of you are coming in with some answers. We've got maybe 5 more seconds here for you to get it in and get your answer to count. Of the lot of you, I think might be plateauing a little. Maybe. I think Danny, we might be good. Good to push it back. All right. Okay, so let's see what we got here. So really kind of a mix across the board. So no extensively, which doesn't surprise me. Again, I think the widespread adoption is very low, not surprising at all. But then a mix between everything to some extent, planning to and not considering it. So this is great. I think there'll be hopefully something for everyone to kind of learn from it here, whether to advance or maybe to change your opinion on how you not considering it to maybe starting to figure out, okay, maybe there's some opportunity for us. Maybe there's some quick wins. And so let me know, as we're going through, if you have questions on it that can help you build up maybe that business case or confidence to start to deploy. Okay. This is one way to think about it, right? So what I want to do is kind of break down what are high level general support use cases, right? I don't think a lot of this should be surprising to anyone, but I think it is good, again, to reinforce where these things are, and then we'll show some of this in practice in a bit, and more importantly, where you could expect impact from these, right? So from these practical examples, I think that bring it to life. First, you have those kind of AI chatbots, virtual agents. Many support desks now are kind of, deploying these kind of advanced chatbots that are powered by, NLP to answer those kind of routine inquiries or using your generative AI to kind of comb and build up that knowledge. Half of Gen AI products this year are going to focus on this level of employee support, service desk interactions, and things of the like. And this is a space that obviously is not uh, new or groundbreaking, right? I think this level of chatbots, whether for good or for bad, have been around for the better part of, I don't know, almost probably 8 years now, 9 years, right? Some level of them using kind of first generations of NLP, where you kind of had, Watson is kind of that primary player in this space with these lengthy deployments and functionality. But really, while the concept or use case hasn't changed, I think the approach to it and the ease of kind of building up that knowledge and library, right, of using unstructured data to provide answers really has evolved, right? And it's much more advanced. Obviously, there is some risk associated with this. If you're going to make it customer facing, I think that's why a lot more organizations are doing this. Maybe for internal IT help desk for employee support, in a sense, is maybe a first step because I think you're a little more forgiving there, right? There's some less brand reputation potential impact. Second on this is that kind of agent assistance, right? That agent kind of triage, right? My partner in crime, someone's going to help me out, sit over my shoulders, a breaking case of emergency, glass situation, right? Where it's listening into live calls or watching live chats, and suggesting responses or maybe articles for support. It's helping someone in a technical environment, right? Where you're troubleshooting something, you have to quickly look through knowledge or find an answer to it. Again, this assistant that's really kind of playing an active role in streamlining and simplifying or leveling up maybe your L1 reps. And simplifying processes and removing some of that friction that we saw earlier, right, with 40% of time being spent searching through knowledge libraries. Um, you know, the next piece, automation, automated remediation. Um, I think this is somewhere where uh, there's a lot of hesitation, right? Because that kind of set it and forget it type thing when it is scripted automation is there's guardrails, right? If A, then B, right? And so you can define those and kind of put those out there. When you're using AI, it's much more agile, right? And the idea is that it can look and solve things more at scale, but it doesn't necessarily have those guardrails on it. And so I think some companies are, potentially hesitant to roll that out and want some level of kind of supervision on that, right? I think to me that's probably the biggest hurdle for a lot of companies to get over. Um, and then lastly, you have kind of the analytics side of it, and I think this is where a lot of the rewards are going to be seen, right? Digging into some of that data and insights to find patterns, right, in support tickets or emerging problems that they can flag or skill gaps that maybe your team might have. There's so many ways that I can dig into, right? Looking at transcripts, looking at trends or themes or session notes or call notes or whatever to identify, right? And these use cases can collectively, show, answer where those gaps are, or identify, where when are we going to have some spikes in support or things like that. So to me, I think there's some of the biggest benefits are going to probably come out or are already being seen, that analytics portion, right? And these collectively, right, you can see where in this kind of technical support AI is already having significant impact. And we'll touch on maybe some of those numbers as well. One thing I did want to double click into, right, because we're talking about remote support specifically, is bringing those kind of examples maybe a little more tangible with regards to the remote support space, right? Um, so I think two kind of key areas when you think about this technical remote support, remote control, getting in, break fix support, that are being used, right? The use case are one. Um, diagnostics, right? Going in, helping to troubleshoot, triage things, right? Impact almost immediately. And I think Aberdeen had some study that said that these kind of AI diagnostic tools are reducing time to identify root causes or problems with by 37%. And kind of having this fast analysis, right? Removing those kind of manual processes or SOPs that businesses go through, that support reps go through when they connect to or start troubleshooting. The other piece of it is that knowledge assistance, right? I mentioned this on the previous slide with the agent support, but having that kind of high impact in something that's so common is another thing that really businesses should be looking at, right? And what Metrigy, I mentioned them earlier, they had a study that actually showed that having an AI powered knowledge system is improving that kind of FCR, first contact resolution, by 28%, right? Just because you can get the answers quickly, speeding up things, but also get the right answer, right problem solving for customers. And these are kind of simple things to potentially deploy and to use. And so wanted to bring those to life, and we're actually going to highlight a little bit about how we're looking at that at LogMeIn within Rescue as well. Before we do dive into that, I wanted to discuss more of kind of the impact, right? How should you be looking at the impact? What should you be measuring, right? And I think there's kind of really, two pieces to this. Again, I'm going to look at the agent side. I'm going to look at the customer side. So, um, you know, in my mind, something that I like to call kind of, agent amplification effect, right? Right. How are you making your agents kind of superheroes, in a sense, and that's really how these technologies are transforming the capabilities and experience of support agents themselves, right? It's amplifying who they are. It's making maybe a team of 100 feel like a team of 1,000, right? First thing is your knowledge amplification, right? According to some benchmark data, support organizations that have this kind of mature AI implementations are enabling their tier one reps to resolve 31% of more issues than they did previously. Again, you're getting solved by cheaper levels, reducing those kind of unnecessary escalations, right? With giving them that knowledge, upskilling, up leveling your L1 reps. The next one is really the experience of those agents, right? Let's go back to the first slide we jumped into, that turnover, that burnout for agents, right? Those companies that have deployed and using AI kind of at scale and in the right way to help support their agent have showed the 76% greater job satisfaction among those agents, right? Reducing that turnover, reducing that stress, and reducing that burnout of them. And then lastly, because turnover and onboarding is, it's necessary, faster getting to kind of that knowledge level, getting to that level of proficiency and comfort, has shown when AI is being used, or being leveraged to support and amplify your agents, 47% faster to actually get to that level of being a very capable L1 rep, that can handle kind of the large support loads, call logs, and not needing to escalate as much, right? So it's, you know, this is representing in my mind kind of a fundamental shift in how you should think about AI and support, right? Not just for kind of that burn and churn and quickly, hey, let's, self-service diagnose, but really, right, what can you do to make your staff happier and work smarter and work more easily, right? The other end of this is that kind of customer experience side of it. So I said, right, two sides of the coin. Without your agents, things aren't going to be solved. Obviously, without your customers, there's no one to solve problems for. And while that operational efficiency is important, the ultimate goal of any support organization is going to be delivering that kind of exceptional level of customer experiences and customer service, right? And with customer expectations continuing to rise, different ways that you can impact that positively and meet those expectations or surpass those expectations are going to be paramount for your organization. So, one of the big things is speed to resolution that you kind of see. Companies that have deployed this the right way have seen up to 43% reduction in resolution time with AI assisted support. Consistency is obviously another piece of this, right? Forrester had some analysis where that came from, that showed that AI assisted support that showed a 35% decrease in variations in how things are being solved, right? And then support quality between different agents or different times of day. And so kind of that level of consistency, someone's going to call in with a similar problem from wherever or to whatever, is going to get that same high level of support across the board, right? And this also helps you understand where maybe there's gaps or opportunities if support's being provided the same regardless of who's coming into it. And then lastly, right, that boost in satisfaction at the end of the day, the payoff to you, right? 18 to 23% increase in CSAT by organizations that have been implementing AI. And so these are all stats that are coming out, kind of aggregated studies and service, not just from one specific place. But I think it really does show you kind of that level of impact if done the right way, and in the right potential impact area that businesses could potentially see, right? So for those of you that were saying, hey, maybe not considering, maybe this is starting to give you some other potential ideas of the use cases and maybe what you'd expect to see. But right, I dove into two specific areas. I think there's a way to kind of look more broadly, right? If you're thinking kind of KPIs that you should be tracking. Okay. So those were just kind of small pointed things, but there is kind of that level up, right? And I think there's probably three areas where you want to justify AI, right? So whether you have started to invest in it or you're starting to consider it, right? You got to build that business case. You have to understand where am I going to see an impact? Where am I going to see this return, right? So I think the APIs are in three areas. You have your cost metrics, you have your efficiency metrics, and you have your customer metrics, right? And to my mind, these kind of all layer kind of on top of each other if you think about it, right? First you kind of have at the top here your CSAT, your first call resolutions, repeat ticket rates kind of going down, right? Those are the KPIs you should be looking at from your customer side of it. From the efficiency side, we need to be looking at things that are directly shortening wait times, right? Decreasing those handle times, resolution times, right? Things that are driving down your cost per ticket, right? If you're solving it with your kind of L1 reps rather than kind of escalating these things. These are kind of key things that you should be, again, areas that you could expect for KPIs to have that measure. And then lastly, your cost metrics, right? Total support spend, and utilizations of teams and so forth. So, I think these are really where you should ladder them up. But there's obviously then what have people seen in those areas, right? There's the three areas I want to break down. These are real numbers and real improvements that businesses have seen, right? And so if you're doing these today, maybe these are some stats. And I won't go through all of them. I think it's important to kind of put those up here. But really, again, this is a company called MetricNet. If you haven't looked at them, they're great in kind of looking at different benchmarks of organizations. They have a great source if you're trying to figure out what are KPIs or where am I kind of on the scale. Basically what they looked at was organizations that had this more mature AI implementations, right? And those that are, right, kind of set that, okay, here's best in class, and here's where that, and those that are doing it, right, 43% reduction in mean time to resolution, decreases in handle time to up to 38%, and improvement in first contact resolution, right? Kind of this holy trinity of your kind of handle time, average time, and that first contact, first call, getting it done, right? That all ladder together to lower those kind of support costs. From the financial time, that reduction in cost per ticket of 32%, escalation costs, and agent utilizations. Again, those kind of three areas that I mentioned previously that we need to be measuring on, right? And so really that cost per ticket is kind of key because if you're thinking about this, right, if you're getting things solved at kind of your first tier or faster, the cost associated is going to be a lot less than we need to escalate, sit in queues longer, hang longer. And then lastly, one of the areas, at the end of the day, where you want to see is that kind of increase in CSAT, right? 21%, NPS improvements to 16%, and just what I think is important, is that kind of reduction in repeat contacts. You're like, oh, well, a customer KPIs, that financial, that kind of hits across all three. But at the end of the day, I think in my mind, if I'm a customer and I don't need to reach back out with a problem, that to me is going to make me much more satisfied and happier at the end of the day. And that's key. So that's why I kind of tucked it into that bucket. But, you know, so what I really wanted to do with these is kind of give you that idea of like what should you expect for an impact? Where should you, well, not what you should, these are mature organizations, but where should you expect to see that impact, right? And not all of these, obviously, depending on how you're deploying it and looking at those key metrics is where, you're going to hone in on. But I would really be looking at these areas as the KPIs that you should be impacting, right? And we'll talk in a little bit around, what are the steps starting to deploy. But going back to it, like which of these are most important? Where is the most opportunity in your organization? Think specifically about these areas, and I think that'll help you start to hone in on like what is right. Okay, so I said wanted to circle back to rescue for a little bit. I'm going to close up in a little bit about kind of that moving forward and challenges, but did want to talk a little bit about those implementations within rescue. I'm going to tie back to actually a lot of what I said, and really again whether it's rescue you're looking at and want to deploy something like this, or maybe other solutions, I think this does help bring it to life, right? And this is for me the best way to actually explain something is to show, not necessarily always tell, right? So um, with rescue, we have kind of this AI package AI offering that we have for organizations that covers in a few different areas. First, and they're all kind of aimed for this idea of supporting those kind of L1s or L2 reps to really reduce the burdens and drive that efficiency piece, right? So we're thinking about those different KPIs. Efficiency is really what was key when we were thinking about what we were building to provide our customers with this functionality. So we have kind of a few key things with our device analysis, that diagnostics that I spoke about, screen analysis to understand what's going on with your screens and in your sessions, some integrate a session summary at the end, kind of wrap up, and then a few integrations that are coming out as well. So this is it at the high level, but let me talk briefly about each of these areas, and then we're going to play a quick little demo for you again to bring it more to life, and you can see, how this type of technology can have that benefit, right? So what is AI screen analysis and device analysis? Well, device analysis is exactly what it says, right? What it is, when you're going into a remote support session or a technical support session, a lot of the times, a lot of it's hunting around. What is the problem? Maybe it's a vague issue. Maybe there are some SOPs or basic things that a business will go through to start clicking around and review some things. Well, the device analysis, you can actually just go in quickly with one click of the button, check off a lot of those key things that you would otherwise do to look at the device health, right? And it'll kind of come back, identify where there's potential issues with your device, right? Everything from just basic resources to error codes and so forth, and then even potentially recommend some steps that can be done to troubleshoot these. The next one is on the screen analysis side, and where this really becomes a benefit is where you get a lot of those potential vague error codes or issues that come up. And so, with kind of a quick little highlight, what the AI will do, it'll come back and let you know, hey, what is this error code? And on top of that, it'll also suggest what are some steps that you should take to potentially address this problem, right? Some quick troubleshooting things, right? So, it kind of ties back the what's the problem with the knowledge documentation on how to solve the problem. The other piece, for any of you that are obviously in the support space, one of the the biggest, I think, pains for agents, and one of the areas that kind of can slow down operations as quickly as possible is those kind of wrap up, right? Your session wrap up where you're pulling together all your notes, documenting what was done, what was said on the call, to make sure you have that, right? And if you skip this area, you know, not only is it just bad, obviously, documentation hygiene, but if a customer calls back and has a problem, it's not attached to the ticket, so you don't know what was done previously. Can't be used maybe for that larger AI analysis to understand trends or themes within support calls. And so what the AI session summary does is it actually runs in real time to see what's going on during a session and summarizes everything that happened during this live remote support session. And so you can really everything that was on the screen, actions that were taken, whether in the diagnostics behind the scenes, conversations that were had, or so forth, are all captured right here. So you don't have to manually document and sit down there. Plain English resolution steps that were done, and the agent can easily go in and edit these if they need to on the fly to clean them up. So you're reducing a 2, 3, 4 minutes of wrap up writing down to 10 seconds to pull together this session summary. And then the last thing that we're really excited about, it's going to be releasing very soon, coming later this quarter, is kind of this new ServiceNow integration. So for those of you that are ServiceNow shops, we're kind of advancing our integration with it. So it gives you the capabilities to actually hook into existing ticket information or the AI knowledge or your ServiceNow knowledge base to actually serve up more contextual recommendations within a support session as that device diagnostics are going on, or as you're doing that screen analysis, right? And so that way you can kind of help your agents solve things much more quickly within sessions, uh, you know, prevent those kind of toggles between interfaces. And we're really excited for this to come out in the next few weeks. I've seen some demos that are in kind of the development stage, and it is a pretty smart and I think fluid connection between the tools. So with that, I said a lot there. I'm going to take a quick break and come off. One of our product leads, Daniel, recorded this demo for me to pull up and show you a few of these features in action. And then when we come back, we'll show a few other things. So, all right.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the speed run of the AI features of our new add-on. So first of all, we're gonna look at error analysis, which lets you capture any error message and make sense of that instead of going to Google and look for a solution. So you just drag along the error message, and then you will see a little widget here that will first analyze the message, and here we see there's some issues with a file path not being found and the program cannot be launched. So it suggests me three things here to verify the file path, reinstalling the app, and check for any recent changes. Now, I know that this app should not be installed on the end user machine, which is why I'm directly navigating to the registry. The end user told me that this only appears when um, when the PC is launched or started up. So I'm going to the registry, check in the folder where all the startup applications live, and I'm seeing this entry here, fake app. I'm gonna delete it, and that should hopefully solve the end user issue. Now, I will inform the user, you should not see the message any longer. And I'm gonna end the remote control session, having done my job. And then what I want to do is I want to generate a summary of everything that we exchanged here in the chat and everything that I did. So there were constantly screenshots taken on the end user machine, capturing all the things I did. So we see our issue here, error message startup. We see the diagnosis, error message indicated fake app X executable. Support agent deleted the fake app as the resolution, so it captured that I actually deleted the registry entry and it already reports the correct path. And here we can see the detailed steps I took. Everything is there, what I did, open registry editor and so on, and then the outcome that I reported should not appear any longer. And last of all, while I'm on the end user machine, I'm performing a quick health check with our AI device analysis to see if there's any issues that I could take care of. So we see here we have high RAM usage, system hasn't been rebooted for a longer time. Everything, all these things I could take care of while I'm on the machine anyway, freeing up some RAM and performing a reboot. So that's our AI feature in a very condensed format.
Awesome. Thanks for playing that, Danny. And hopefully that was helpful. Let me share my screen again here. Second, pull this up. Sure it's the right screen. Perfect. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a flavor, of the functionality that exists within Rescue today. And as I said, we're building out a lot of other functionality from our ServiceNow integration together. But again, what I wanted to show, not just great to obviously promote our product for Rescue, but to show you in, bringing to life some of the functionality that I mentioned earlier, right? It's kind of agent assistance, almost as simple as that, to eliminate the need for going into a knowledge base or searching something up, for going on the web to type in error codes to figure out what is this issue that we were having, to do diagnostics and go through, oh, is the RAM high? When has this been reviewed? These basic steps to help maybe solve future problems can be done quickly while you're already within a session and supporting an end user or customer, right? And then that session wrap up, again, eliminating a lot of the manual steps and processes that are slowing down agents, and frankly, that kind of burnout that we were talking about earlier, not the most fun, kind of always typing up those wrap up notes. So hopefully you enjoyed that. If you have questions on it, please feel free to drop in the chat. Happy to answer more. If you want a more personalized experience or demo, happy to get you set up with one of those as well. So before we kind of wrap up here, there's kind of two things that I wanted to face on, right? No technology is going to be plug and play, right? There's always going to be challenges and considerations, especially with something new, right? And so I painted obviously a very positive and rose-colored glasses, view for the past, 40 minutes. But there are these kind of challenges. There are these risks, these opportunities, these caution flags that you should be thinking about as you're deploying this, or if you have deploying them, right? And you want to make sure you're deploying a new technology, any technology, responsibly, right? So things to think about. One, obviously security and privacy. I think anything with a new technology is going to introduce these new risks, right? And so you need to be mindful. You need to make sure your security team is involved to do these kind of full audits. If you're working with a third party organization, make sure that they have experience in how to audit and understand these. Look at the terms of the technology, right? You want to make sure that your data is kind of separated or siloed, ensure that you have kind of ultimate control. It's not completely black box in how if you're using it for automations or, customer engagements, how can you kind of monitor and work alongside it? Data and integration, again, something to think about and can be challenging depending on the tools you're using, right? AI is going to need high quality data, and it's going to integrate with legacy systems, right? And integrations can be complicated, so it needs to think about that, right? As you're evaluating tools or evaluating deployment, think about what are other ways you might be using this. What other systems is it going to need from, and is it compatible with that? Is there a lot of effort to kind of do that and stand it up, right? Um, Another one, human and AI balance. Leaders, you have to understand, right? There needs to be some level in my mind of disclosing kind of AI use, right? So if you're using things with customers or prospects or employees, right, let them know it's AI. I think that that's very much okay and it's expected in this day and age, right? So make that transparent. Don't make it hide like it's an actual human engagement with someone because that'll just cause more frustration. And make sure that it also has some level, again, of that kind of human oversight to be able to fix or adjust as needed along the way. um, you know, there needs to be this training and trust, right? Both with your agents if it's agent facing, with customers to kind of use it effectively. And lastly, change management. Change is always hard. And just like putting forward any other tool or technology, introducing these kind of new workflows, you need to make sure that your staff and teams are involved early and often. Testing things internally, testing workflows to make sure it's optimized for how they're working today and not disrupting or needing to reskill everyone in a certain way to get it to work the way you want it, right? And by anticipating these or knowing that they're going to come up, you can kind of ensure, in my mind, that your AI is going to deliver the ultimate value that it can without kind of disruptions to both, to operations or to trust with your internal teams or customers. So one thing I did want to ask, because I'm always curious about this, right? I mentioned security and privacy because that's a big one here, and would love to know, and this is something I feel like it continues to ebb and flow in conversations I've had. So this is for, really my own education. What is your level of concern for security and privacy with AI tools, right? Is it low, medium, high? So jump in quickly. I'm, curious to know. Maybe again, there might be a few things I could say or add in. If there is some serious concerns that you're having with your AI tools. If there's a specific question you have on this, recently had a full webinar a few months ago with one of our AI specialists in house where we had a lengthy discussion about this as well. So maybe I can give you a few nuggets along the way for that as well. So I think we're probably at a good critical mass. Danny, looks like our response are starting to slow down. So let's see what we got coming in here. So a little bit of a mix, right? Medium and high, no on low, which again, not surprising. Any type of new tool, if you said low, I would I don't know whether I'd applaud or question. But yeah, I'd say on the medium high side again, not different from what I've seen. What I would say, is key with any tool, right? If you have that kind of high levels of concerns, I think it's understanding, what LLMs or large language models are being used, how's your data being used in it, right? And kind of having those concerns and working with a trusted company, right? There's a lot of startups and smaller organizations that are out there that are doing some cool things, but again, there's risk to that, right? And knowing A, are they going to be around, and B, how is your data being used by them? And so I'd caution when working with any of those, you really vet them well, have someone legally really review what's in your agreement and how things are being used, what sources, open source things are they being used, and how is that using their data, and so forth. So a lot of key, big questions out there, but hopefully, I think there are ways to kind of get past those with the proper motions in place. So awesome. All right. So, last thing I want to leave you with, and again, if you have any questions, start dropping them in the chat because we'll get to that right after this one, is the path to AI powered support, right? So, wrapping up what way, said a lot here today, hopefully to build the business case, hopefully where you can see some of the value or impacts you could have at your organization if you're to deploy them or how to do it. And so, shifting from kind of that why to the how is what I want to leave you with, right? This kind of more practical roadmap to implement AI in your organization. So, you know, this is based off of experience that I've seen, conversations that I've had with some Fortune 50 organizations and customers, talking to different analysts and so forth. And so I think first, clearly understanding your use case, right? We're not going to boil the ocean. What you need to do is maybe focus on that. What is that one pain, right? Where is that measurable impact in our organization, right? And starting there, and then understanding, okay, once we do that, right, you're much more likely to set yourself up for success than by those kind of driving more of a general interest or general kind of kicking the tires on stuff, right? So kind of hone in there. What's that one clear use case? What is that one thing you want it to solve? Next one, and I mentioned this on the previous slide, involve your agents, involve your team that's going to be using this and be impacted by it, right? Collect feedback from them. Use AI to augment, not necessarily replace your agents. Yeah, there's opportunity probably to deflect and shift left with things. Level 0, level -1, if you're going to predictive, but really involving them early and prioritizing that agent adoption, because I do think a lot of the easiest or fastest way to deploy AI is going to be on that agent facing side. So involving them in it early, and it's going to help you drive adoption with it, right? And the more adoption, the more returns and more impacts you're going to see, right? And when they're involved early, that's where it's going to set you up for success, and it's not going to result in those kind of bottlenecks to workflows or other potential knowledge gaps. And then lastly, start small and measure quickly, right? That's the key thing, right? And if you're looking at a clear use case, you're involving your agents, you're identifying that one thing, pilot something on that kind of high volume area where you can see that return and see, hey, is this working for us? What needles do we have to dial up or dial down? And don't be afraid. One of the key things that, from a SaaS perspective, you're always saying is you want to be able to, fail fast, right? If you put something out or you do something, you want to understand quickly that it's not working, so then you can pivot and do something else. And my guess is whatever you put out with AI is probably not going to hit a home run immediately, but you learn from it quickly and then you make adjustments. Maybe it's, hey, this wasn't the right use case, not having the return we thought it was going to have, or this was it, and maybe it's not as easily deployed or accessible, not integrated right. But you need to be able to solve quickly and not get it perfect and not get it right, but kind of get it out there and learn along the way, right? And use those quick wins to kind of build up that momentum and kind of grow and do more. So um, that's what I have for you today. Hopefully, some of this was valuable. If you took away one, maybe two nuggets from this, I'd consider it a success for myself and really appreciate it. And I think, Danny, with that, we can probably open it up if there's any questions that have come in.
Yes, we do have a few that I see here. Let me grab them quickly. All right. So the first one we have, do you see more companies building do you see more companies building our AI or using off the shelf?
Um, yeah, so I would say at this point, more organizations are using kind of that off-the-shelf stuff, right? The stuff that's kind of turnkey for the exact reasons that I mentioned, right? You don't, years ago, when you just kind of Watson and people had to invest 12 to 18 months and millions of dollars to get something stood up and not know if it was going to be successful or not, those days are long gone, right? Now you can look at something that is kind of out of the box, probably already integrated in tool maybe you're using today, or finding places to do what I said on the last one, quick win, build momentum, fail fast if it's not going to work, right? And kind of build on that and understand. And so that's why more and more tools companies are using it. Some things have, their own centers of AI or excellence where they're testing things internally, but to me, those are more, skunkwork projects off to the side internally for things that are going to scale. Go to the companies that are really focused on that and taking things already and go out of the box and make it fit into your organization.
That makes sense. We've definitely come a long way, right?
Yeah.
All right. What are the privacy controls on the AI LogMeIn is using?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mentioned security and privacy. Probably should have alluded to that. So, we practice what I was just preaching, right? Our large language models are not trained on kind of our customer data. We do not pass anything, and we do use open source other technology. We don't just build all of our own LLMs, but we also don't pass back any customer data. Where those larger models, whether you're using OpenAIs or anything like that, where they would train on our data as well. So we have a large kind of technical documentation, architecture approach if anyone wanted to dive into it. But your data is your own, and you can opt out of using things or sharing information, and you kind of have that ultimate control over the privacy side of it.
Awesome. Awesome. A couple more coming in as we're diving into the questions. We do most of our troubleshooting over the phone with a uh, log me in remote session. Can our spoken conversation be included as part of the summary analytics?
Ooh, that's a great point. So I think so for within the rescue session itself, the one that's pulled up, no. because we don't have that capability yet. However, we are building out VoIP capabilities within our WebTC. I can find out from our team those VoIP capabilities will start to get tracked in there. The other thing, though, depending what other platforms you're using from integration, you can obviously append that stuff after the fact. So those session summaries are going to pass over like any other session notes that Rescue has used, and so you could append chat logs and stuff to it that way as well. Yeah, so hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, perfect. And if you need anything else elaborated, I think that was Joel, please feel free to drop a follow up in the chat. Okay. Could you please, I'll take this last question here. Could you please confirm if this will be implemented in the LogMeIn Rescue application?
So the functionality that I showed you today is live and available. It is kind of an additional package, but there is, I think, a 30-day trial if you want to kick some tires on it. So I think we'll probably have a question here on the wrap up that says if you want to talk to someone just to get it, and we can get it enabled for your account. And you
Yeah,
could play around with it, give us your feedback.
perfect. Awesome. All right. Should we wrap it up, Chris, or do you want to take one more question?
If there's anything else, if there is one more, happy to take that. If not, we can wrap it up.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you guys so much. We really appreciate you joining us today. Chris, you were amazing as usual. The amazing Chris with another webinar for us. I will,
Yeah,
as you mentioned, Chris, drop this one last poll before we completely wrap up. If you like an
awesome. And
opportunity, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say, and while they're doing that, if you want to talk to a rescue expert to get this enabled, happy to set that up again. To get the trial set up for the AI, there isn't kind of an immediate flag. You can just reach out and they'll get you set up or personalize a demo for you, answer any questions on the privacy security stuff. We also have a session next week where I'm back again that's focused on security. So we'll be talking about some of the security functionality as well. So if you enjoyed what I shared, or even if you didn't, come next week. Maybe I can impress you then. I'm not sure.
We'll do a second take. Perfect. Thank you guys
Exactly.
so much. Please feel free to drop your poll answer. And as Chris mentioned, hopefully we'll see you guys next week.
Awesome.
All right. Have a good one.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.